Okay, good evening. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. It is 6:33 p.m. We are at the Grayslake Middle School. First order of business is a call to order and a roll call.
Weedman,
Here.
Mack,
Here.
Braden,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
LaCroix,
Here, but remotely.
okay, Nash,
Here, remotely.
Strack.
Here on the phone.
Okay, so that gives us a quorum. So now for the first time since, I believe, March, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America.
Okay, next will be the approval of the agenda, but I would like, as the board president, like to make a quick change in the order of the agenda. We would like to put the presentation for the hybrid learning plan before public comment. The idea behind this is that will allow the administration to give the presentation on the plan. Hopefully, maybe it'll answer some of the questions as she expounds out on the points that are inside the plan. And then the board will have an opportunity to ask questions. And hopefully maybe that'll clear some things up for everybody and might shorten the public comment period. So I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Miller,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Nash.
Aye.
Okay, next we're up to the presentation.
All right, this is pretty long, so I want to make sure you can hear me. Sound is okay? Yes? Okay. And we need to get our slides up. There we go. All right. As you know, we shared out a draft of our hybrid and remote learning plan yesterday so that community members could review it in advance of this meeting. Tonight, I'll share the highlights of that plan with you, beginning with the briefest overview, and then an explanation of our decision metrics, and then I'll move more deeply into some details of the plan. And here is that briefest of overviews. We have concluded that if we are to move into a hybrid plan, that our school community will be best served by a plan that includes the following: ongoing remote learning for all families that request it, an A-B hybrid model for students in general education grades 1 through 8 and our LINK program, and modified AM-PM models for students in kindergarten, in the MILE program, and at the Early Childhood Center. We propose a schedule that will allow the school district to bring students back on site in phases, thus allowing grade level groups of students and staff to adjust to learning new routines and safety protocols in smaller groups. You can see from this schedule that the first groups of students would begin on site on November 2nd, and the last groups would begin on November 16th. We'd asked families to commit for the second trimester, knowing that they can elect another learning option for the third trimester. We'll spend some time now talking about how the health metrics that are available can assist us in deciding our next steps. In September, our school district and Grayslake High School District 127 created a joint task force of stakeholders to build a common understanding of the health and safety metrics needed for reopening our school buildings. We discussed metrics which are provided by the Lake County Department of Health. These are positivity rate, the number of positive cases divided by the total number of tests, which is also used as a measure of adequate testing. Incidence rate, which is the number of new cases per 100,000 residents in the county. COVID-like illness hospital admissions, which is the number of COVID-like illnesses across all ages. And the testing turnaround time, the average number of days between when a sample is collected and when that sample is entered into the electronic lab reporting system. School districts are generally advised to meet the three measures of incidence rate, hospital admissions, and testing turnaround time before transitioning to the next phase. Positivity rate can also be considered. We are advised to remain in one phase for at least 10 days before transitioning to the next phase, and to first transition to hybrid learning from remote learning before transitioning to full on-site learning. We have the data all together here. You can see that when our plan was drafted, both the 7-day average test positivity rate and the 7-day average incidence rate indicated hybrid learning. The COVID-like illness admissions, hospital admissions, indicated all virtual or remote learning, and the testing turnaround time indicated in-person learning. The health department tells us that even though it is best for us to meet those three measures before moving into the next phase, some of those metrics are more important than others. Specifically, you'll note that the hospital admittance number is quite low. Oh, you can't tell that from here. Well, I just realized that. You can't tell that from here, but the hospital admissions number is quite low. So even though we have not yet met the measure of not increasing the hospital admissions for 7 out of 10 days, that measure may be less important for us to safely reopen on-site. I have confirmed with the health department that if we are getting close to starting our hybrid model, but have not yet met a measure, we can talk with them about what is causing changes in that metric. For instance, if the hospital rate is up due to an outbreak in a nursing home and is not closely linked to students, we may feel comfortable about reopening. We may not. Similarly, if we have reopened in a hybrid model and then the metrics take a turn for the worse, we will work with the health department to determine if and when a return to the full remote model is necessary. The task force also discussed the logistics to be considered for opening on-site. A very short list of a lot of logistics includes transitioning back and forth between on-site and remote settings if staff or students have COVID-like symptoms, diagnosis, or exposure, symptom screening needs, safety and social distancing concerns, and substitute availability. Stakeholder input has been sought in a variety of ways as we have developed this plan. Parents and guardians were asked to complete a survey for planning purposes, indicating a preference for using ongoing remote learning or hybrid learning for each child, along with transportation information. Preferences were submitted for 66% of students. Of the submitted data, there was an indication that 64% of the students would likely be participating in hybrid learning, and 36% of the students would likely remain in a fully remote setting. Of the submitted data, there was an indication that about 625 students would ride a bus. Staff members were asked to complete a survey regarding their ability to return to work on site. 80% of staff indicated that they expected to return on site. 20% of staff requested remote positions due to underlying conditions for themselves or someone in their households. The district will be working with them to determine placements, which may include remote work if available and leaves of absence if remote work is not available. I've already mentioned the task force that we created with District 127, which included from both districts, members of boards of education, parents, teachers, support staff members, and administrators. Also, a hybrid model feedback meeting was held. At this meeting, a group of parents, union representatives, teachers, support staff members, and administrators gave input on various hybrid plan models. Many hybrid plans were discussed in depth. 7 plans were narrowed to 5, then to 2, then to 1. All had strengths and weaknesses. You can see a sampling of the factors considered here. It was obvious throughout all of the meetings that there is absolutely no one perfect plan. Now, as you know, we shared a draft of a plan yesterday, and since that time, many questions have been posed. Some have asked why we are not using an AM/PM model for all of our students. This is indeed an excellent question. In fact, after our hybrid model choices were narrowed to 2 models, the other contender was indeed an AM/PM model. In that model, students would have been on site for about 2.5 hours per day, every day. On-site time would have been used for the core subjects of English language arts and math at the elementary level. And science, social science, specials, and likely interventions would have occurred during the other half of the day, remotely and mostly asynchronously. At the middle school level, it is likely that there would have been some block scheduling. In other words, students would have received some classes on site some days and remotely other days. Now, in a moment, we will share why we chose the AB model, but I want to share with you now why we did not choose the AM/PM model. At the elementary level, there was a significant concern about how science and social science would be taught. Would the classroom teacher be responsible for creating lessons for science and social science that the students would do on their own remotely? That would be very difficult for those teachers while they were also teaching other students English language arts and math. If not, who would teach those classes? We heard these questions posed as major concerns often. For all grades, there was the concern that having nearly half a day of asynchronous lessons would, in effect, be going backwards for our students. Although it has been enormously difficult, our teachers have done a fantastic job of teaching synchronous lessons this fall. From academic and social emotional learning standpoints, we heard over and over again that this model was much less advantageous for our students. As well, we also acknowledged that 2.5 hours of on-site school is not really 2.5 hours of instruction. There is arrival, settling in, dismissal. We note that this model is indeed in place in some school districts. Also, it has been proposed in other school districts and has recently been met with negativity from staff and parents in some of those districts. One of the negatives from the parent point of view is that parents who are working outside of the home might have a very difficult time getting childcare for half days every day. And keep in mind that a student would really only be on site for about 2.5 hours daily. Of course, safety and operational concerns were discussed at length, so we should address that. In this model, students would not be on site at lunch, and our custodial staff would be disinfecting all classrooms during the in-between window before the arrival of PM students. Overall, not having lunch on site was a positive, but we also discussed the fact that all of the hybrid students would be on site daily. Therefore, there would be the difficulty of double arrivals and dismissals, double temperature taking, double checking of symptom-free certifications. Perhaps this topic was a wash. In the end, we determined that an AB hybrid model for grades 1 through 8 would best meet the needs of our school district. So let's get into the schedule. Students will be broken into 2 groups, A or B. Families will be scheduled into the same group. Students in Group A will attend school on site on Mondays and Tuesdays and will participate remotely along with the Group B students who are learning on site on Thursdays and Fridays. And then the schedule flips. All students will learn together remotely on Wednesdays, allowing our custodial staff to do more thorough cleanings prior to the new group of students arriving the next day. Whether the students are on site or remote on any given day, instruction will be provided through our current platform of the Google Meet. Students in the physical classroom will often wear headphones and keep their Chromebooks muted to avoid feedback concerns. At times, students on site and remote will be able to interact with each other through Google Meets to build community. That will happen a lot. At other times, students who are working remotely will have independent work time while the teacher supports students on site. Like in our current remote model, there are times when students may have asynchronous instruction, but the goal is to have as much synchronous instruction as possible. Small groups will continue through the use of Google Meet as appropriate. We know that is a lot of information. A lot was just packed into those few sentences. And we do want to illustrate for you what it would really be like for students to give you a better picture. So a little bit later, Mr. Lewis will take you through a day of a student in hybrid learning. At this time, I will highlight some of the benefits of the model. First of all, this model has much more synchronous instruction than any other models that were considered. In other words, students have much more time when they are closely connected to a teacher, whether they are on site or at home. Also, it will be easy for students and staff to transition in and out of on-site and remote settings if individuals are sick with COVID, or have been exposed to COVID, or have COVID-like symptoms. And we are hoping that we can include many or most fully remote students with hybrid students so that there is less switching of teachers. And I'll have some more information to share about this topic later. And while certainly families' needs differ, those who need childcare while students are at home may find it easier to manage that for 3 full days than for 5 half days, like in the AM/PM model. Moving on to specials, physical education may take place in our gyms or in the classrooms, and students will be outside as much as possible. Students will not change into PE uniforms. Face masks will continue to be worn when students are inside for PE, and outside also they will wear masks if they are not able to maintain the 6 feet requirement. If they can, masks can come off. Remote students will be provided activities to do at home, while on-site students will be with the physical education teacher. Elementary art and music specials and middle school encore classes will occur in the homeroom space. These teachers will provide a combination of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. Students will not be singing, playing recorders, or using any shared instruments due to safety concerns. Library books will be available for checkout, with students requesting items through the Destiny program. Books will be delivered to on-site students or will be made available for pickup for remote students. Students will not be visiting the Learning Center. Band and choir programming at the upper grades will continue through the use of Google Meets due to concerns of substantial spreading of the coronavirus during musical events. On to kindergarten. We will be using a modified AM/PM hybrid model for kindergarten. Students will attend school on-site every day for a half day during their scheduled times, except for Wednesdays. Wednesdays will be a fully remote half-day experience for kindergarten students. The benefits of this model include the fact that the AM/PM schedule is already in place for kindergarten this year. We like the consistency of students having kindergarten every morning or every afternoon. Having remote school on Wednesdays can be helpful in keeping that platform going for students if there is a need to transition back to remote learning. We also note that students will only need to be masked for a half day and won't have to have lunch on site, which could be difficult for those young students in this socially distanced setting. I will note that it seems likely that fully remote kindergartners will be with a remote teacher rather than being connected to an on-site classroom through a Google Meet. Priorities for a hybrid plan for early childhood include creating a program that is developmentally appropriate and maximizes synchronous learning time as much as possible. This is a significant challenge because for the most part, our teachers cannot teach 3- and 4-year-olds both on-site and at home at the same time, except for a regular circle time. To meet these priorities, a hybrid model that includes time on-site, remote synchronous, and home-based activities has been created. Each teacher will have 4 total sections. At the start of hybrid learning, each section will attend school on-site once a week, either in the morning or in the afternoon. If possible, the amount of on-site instruction will be expanded over time, depending on student staffing ratios, services needed, and ability to maximize instructional times for all students in the program. On days when a group of the students is not on site, Those students will either engage in remote learning activities with a teacher, just as occurred in the first trimester, or will have home-based activities to do. It is important to note that social distancing requirements mean that when on site, students will be engaged in solo, play-based activities in their own workspaces. MILE is one of our specialized programs for students with specific needs. The plan indicates time on site, remote synchronous, and home-based learning activities. MILE students will attend half days in the mornings. The times for MILE are listed here. Asynchronous learning will occur in the afternoon, which will include specials, physical education, teletherapy-related services when appropriate, and other classwork. Depending on the numbers of students selecting the hybrid model, students may be able to attend up to 4 days a week. Each student who is currently eligible to receive special education services through an individualized education plan or has a Section 504 plan will be assigned to a case manager for on-site learning. Students will receive any combination of on-site, teletherapy, or activity-based services. Illinois State Board of Education strongly encourages teletherapy or virtual therapy whenever possible to reduce interactions with more peers and adults. Evaluations that were unable to be completed due to the need for in-person testing will be completed as quickly as possible. Keeping students in the same groups and with the same teacher with whom they started the year is ideal. We will work very hard to keep students with their current teachers. However, it is important to note that in some cases, this may not be possible. For example, some staff members may be unable to be on site due to medical concerns or for other reasons, in which case another teacher might need to take over the hybrid class. Another possibility is that students who have selected the remote setting may be, in some cases, put together in a new class and assigned to a remote teacher. Now we are moving into our safety measures. There are many more details in the plan, and we ask our families to review them closely, but here are some highlights. Students will sit at least 6 feet apart in desks and classrooms, all facing the same direction. Classrooms can typically fit between 11 and 14 students using the socially distanced method. For the most part, students will remain in place, and specialist teachers will travel into the classrooms. There will be some instances where students will need to move into other settings for instructional purposes. Careful hallway and bathroom protocols will be in place, and school-specific arrival and dismissal procedures will be shared. Students will be seated at least 6 feet apart at lunch. A variety of spaces in a school may be used, including multi-purpose rooms, cafeterias, and other common areas, and classrooms if necessary, in order to maximize social distancing. Masks can be removed while eating. School meals will be individually packaged. Allergen-free areas will be designated, and when students eat in common areas, the seat and tables or desks will be cleaned between lunch periods. Students in grades 1 through 4 will be able to go outside for recess, but will not be able to use playground equipment. Regarding busing, students without siblings riding the bus will have assigned seating with only one child to a seat, and seating with one row, aisle in between, will be one aisle seat and one window seat, alternating each row to maximize the distance between students. Siblings may be assigned to the same seat to maximize capacity, but with continued minimal contact with other students. These seating arrangements will result in fewer students per bus and well below the Illinois State Board of Education's guideline of 50 students per bus. However, maintaining a 6-foot distance between all students cannot be guaranteed. Students must wear masks at all times. Parents will be required to complete the self-certification process before students board the bus. Students and staff will be required to wear clean face masks whenever they are inside the school. Masks may be removed outdoors only if social distancing of 6 feet is practiced. Specialized PPE will be provided for health office staff and custodians. Plexiglass partitions have been installed in school offices. Hand hygiene will be taught, and students will not be able to share personal belongings. A great deal of information about symptom screening and illness protocols is available in the written plan. Here is a very brief summary. Symptom screening and temperature checks are required every day for all students and staff. Individuals with any symptoms of COVID-19 and their family members must remain home. Students with symptoms will be supervised in quarantine spaces for students and will need to be picked up within 30 minutes. Unless a doctor confirms an alternate diagnosis, symptomatic students cannot come to school for a minimum of 10 days, and students in close contact with a probable case must be excluded a minimum of 14 days. This may include bus contacts. CCSD46 will work with the Lake County Health Department to contact trace, and of course, it is possible that a full class or even a grade level could return to remote learning due to exposure. And of course, that could also happen for a full school. Like with symptom screening, cleaning protocols are extremely important and are explained in detail in the plan. Briefly, daily cleaning procedures include sanitation of high touch points 2 to 3 times daily, sanitization of bathrooms 4 to 5 times daily, nightly use of electrostatic discharge sprayers, and of course, at least nightly vacuuming. We have replaced water fountains with water bottle fillers, and these will be regularly sanitized. All areas that have been used by individuals with COVID-like symptoms will be cleaned and disinfected after the room has sat empty for 24 hours. Unless weather conditions do not allow, 100% fresh air from the HVAC system will be brought in and run continuously for the 24-hour lockdown period of the room or area. If waiting 24 hours isn't feasible, the custodial staff will wait as long as possible to clean and disinfect. Right at School is an optional fee-based program through a third party that offers on-site before and after school care for students. Depending on the level of family interest, Right at School may run a before and or after school care program available to students who are on-site on that particular day. The cost of this program varies depending on the time of day, before or after school, and the number of days per week the child will be attending the program. Please be aware that updated ratio requirements due to COVID-19 may also limit spaces available. As in the past, the program may not be available at all buildings, and students may be bused to and from their home school. Now, we know that we will have families who select remote learning for their children. Remote learning will be very similar to what is currently in place regarding instructional practices and schedules. We hope to include most remote students in the class groupings with the hybrid students, but it may be necessary to place some in fully remote classes with new teachers if staffing needs indicate this. And to close out our presentation, and none too soon because I am losing my voice, Mr. Lewis will present the day in the life of a hybrid student.
So let's begin with a student in grade 3 assigned to group A. It's Monday morning. Before I get off the bus or get to school, my family will need to certify that I don't have any symptoms associated with COVID. My parents know how to do this with the app that the school district has provided. When I get off the bus or out of my car or arrive after walking to school, I will need to have my temperature checked. If I have a fever, I'll be asked to go into the school to be rechecked by the health clerk or nurse. Otherwise, I will be able to go into the school and I'll go directly to my classroom. I'll be asked to use hand sanitizer to enter my room every time I come in and out of the room. I'll be asked to go directly to my seat in my class. My teacher will take attendance and take lunch counts. My teacher will allow some of us at a time to go to our cubby to put away our coats, our boots, lunch, and maybe my backpack. I will get to decide if I want to keep my snack, if I brought one, at my desk for later in the morning. The goal is that I won't need to go back to my cubby until lunch. I will have everything I need in my backpack that I'll either unpack or leave by my desk. My teacher may have some morning work for me to do, while the rest of the class takes care of all of their supplies. The day will begin with a class meeting for all of us on site and for the students who are in the B group. We'll review the day's plan and maybe have an SEL lesson or a technology mini lesson. I'll be listening to the teacher through Google Meet with my headphones. It's hard to hear if all of us have the sound on at the same time without headphones. Once the class meeting is done, we will start our day of instruction. The teacher will have a schedule posted in Google Classroom or Seesaw for anyone in grades K through 2 for everyone to access with all the details of the day. As we have done so far this year, each subject will begin with a Google Meet with the on-site and remote students together. My teacher will do some direct instruction, and we will all work on some examples together for practice. We might even work in small groups. Sometimes we'll only have on-site kids in my group, and sometimes I will be in a Google Meet with a small group from students who are online. I will be provided with all the details for my assignments. My teacher may ask the on-site students to close their computers and get busy. My teacher may spend a little time with the students online to answer any questions or to help students. After this, my teacher might talk with me individually or help me or work with any of the other students in the classroom. As the morning goes on, I might need a bathroom break following my school's procedures to make sure that there are only a few students in the bathroom at any one time. I can also refill my water bottle if needed. I'm able to have my snack in the morning. I'm encouraged to have an easy-to-eat snack that I can eat fairly quickly since I have to take my mask off while I'm eating. Sometimes between subjects, my teachers help us with a movement break. I like when we use Go Noodle to do some dancing. We'll have other subjects or different assignments, lessons throughout the morning. I'll have my regularly scheduled time for PE. I'll go to the gym or outside when possible. The PE teacher will have given the online students the plan for what they are doing at home. The PE teacher will work with us. When I go outside, I can take my mask off if I'm over 6 feet away from the other kids in my class. Lunchtime. Whew. We get invited to get our lunch boxes and then line up, of course, 6 feet apart. If I'm getting a school lunch, it will be individually packaged and will be ready for me where I eat my lunch. Everyone has their assigned place for lunch. I will probably be eating in the multipurpose room or another large space, but it is possible that I might eat in my classroom. Recess. I know that we can't use the playground equipment at this time. It is good to go outside as much as possible. Again, I can take off my mask if we stay apart from other students and teachers. If it is a day that we have a special, like art or music, our art or music teacher may come to our room, or they may be in a Google Meet with my class. Specials work the same as the other subjects. Our class will watch a video about what we're doing, or listen to the teacher explain and show us what we're doing. Other subjects may continue in the afternoon. Will continue in the afternoon. Pretty much the same as our schedule in trimester 1. On some days, I do have to work on my speech with the speech teacher. My teacher and I know the schedule. I quickly go to the identified room or location for this. Most of the time, my speech teacher works with me on Google Meets. When we are finished, I go right back to class. At the end of the day, we may have an end of the day Google Meet with all of the kids in my class. Our teacher may have another SEL or technology tool for us to learn about. We might talk about any assignments we may need to finish at home if we didn't finish them during the school day. We have to listen to see what group gets called to leave for dismissal. I know we can't all leave at the same time since there are too many kids in the hallway. When it's my turn, I'm on my way. I need to keep going and get where I need to go to get home. It might be the bus line, it might be the parent pickup area, or my route to walk home. Tuesday is pretty similar to today. I might have a different special. Now it's Wednesday. Everyone in my class will be remote. My teacher will continue to teach us like they did during trimester 1. On Thursday and Friday, I am learning remotely while the Group B students are in the classroom. I'll find my special learning spot at home or daycare and join the Google Meet for the morning meeting and for each subject throughout the day. Some of my classmates will be at school and some will be working remotely like me. My schedule and assignments are available in Google Classroom or Seesaw for me to follow. I'll have lots of time during the day when the students on site will be learning with all of us working remotely. I'll join some small groups throughout the day to interact with the other remote students and the other kids on site. I will have any specials that I have on those days. My teacher will share what I need to do, and I know when my teacher is available to help me. Now thinking about this from a middle school perspective, the majority of the day in the life or the week in the life would be fairly similar. Instead of me going to different classrooms each period like I would be in school as it was, my teacher will be coming to the room I am in for class. This means that my schedule may look a little different, but I'll continue to take the same classes I have been throughout the day. I'll follow this revised schedule on the remote day as well. If I was in band or choir, the on-site days will be more music theory, and the remote days will focus more on playing or singing, since I can't do that easy. I can do that easier at home. I know that my teachers are available to support me during the school day or during office hours as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I hope that this description, very well explained, helps our community better picture what hybrid learning would be like in this A-B model. Board of Education, I thank you for all of the questions that you've asked since we sent out the draft of the plan, and I know that you will have many more now. And Mr. Weidman, this closes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. So next, I want to open the floor to questions from our board members, because I know you've gotten a lot of questions from friends, family, and social media. So as best we can address some of those. So I'm just going to kind of go around the room. I figure it'd be easier if we just do one at a time. So Christy, go ahead.
So I am curious about the work environment. How is this plan going to make it better? Or I guess for whom will it make it better? And just what other considerations should we be thinking about in terms of work environment? And to kind of preface that, I'm hoping by the end of COVID, when we're through this, that we can say we are the best workplace, because we are facing a teacher shortage, number one, and number two, because I think we have amazing teachers that are also our neighbors and custodians and other staff people, and I want to just get an idea of what that's going to do to the work environment.
Okay, so to clarify, I just want to make sure I understand the question. The question is, how will this plan improve the work environment for our staff? Is that correct?
So I am definitely interested in how it will improve it. I'm also interested in just generally what the impact will be. And I want to add one more thing to the preface, if I may. I do, from what I understand, I think this makes sense just intuitively, but our kids do well when the adults do well.
Certainly.
So it's how will it improve it, but even more broadly, what impact will it have?
Certainly. I'll begin answering that question, and then Mr. Lewis, if you want to jump in in any way. Okay. So I will start with positives, because there will be staff members who will feel that this plan would be a positive impact for them. So we have certainly many staff members who talk about how badly they want to get back on site, meeting with their students and teaching with their students. So that would be, I would say, the largest impact largest positive impact for some of our staff members, or staff members who may have concerns about coming back on site, but will feel that connection with students and feel that the students are thriving. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that we would have many staff members who would not feel that this was a positive impact for them. We have many staff members who, first of all, remain very concerned about their own safety about being on site or the safety of their family members. We have staff members who will have childcare concerns if they are on site. And we will definitely have, having shared this plan with our staff members, I believe our staff has an understanding that we worked very hard to create a hybrid plan that would meet needs the best that we could. But I know there are concerns about the model, and the fact that the teachers would have responsibilities with students in front of them and students at home as well. So that's a wide range of impacts that it would have on our staff. Paul, do you want to add anything? Have I missed anything specific?
I would just comment a little bit about the work environment I will fully admit that the work environment will not be the same as it was before all this happened. So we have to, before COVID.
Correct.
So the work environment will be a little bit more maybe a lot more challenging, because our entire staff won't be able to be together in the same room to have staff meetings or professional development. So we'll have to continue to use Google Meet to connect teams and to connect people across the district for any of the PD. So the work environment may feel different because the collaboration will feel different. It doesn't mean that it can't be successful. We've actually gotten feedback from some of our late start times or the Institute Day or the remote learning planning days, that the use of Google Meet and not having to travel was actually a benefit. And so it gave more time, but it is not going to be the same.
Sorry. I also have a question about finances. Dr. Glickman, the last time we talked, I believe my impression was that we would stay within budget, that we would not be going out of our budget. Is that still the case, or has that changed?
No, that's definitely still the case. When the budget was approved, it was approved with the assumption that we would eventually be coming back on site in one way or another. And funds were set aside for the variety of things that are needed to come back on site. And so yes, this plan fits within our current budget.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one is there any room for modification in this plan if you had time to implement any number of things? Is there any room to delay the implementation till January? Is there any room to maybe think about having gym outside? And I'm just throwing that out as an example, but using outside spaces, or more importantly, just making sure that all the spaces are well ventilated. Is there room for modification?
Absolutely. There's a reason why we keep calling this, or we try to keep calling this, a plan draft. There's all kinds of things that could be changed in the plan. The basic structure that we've put together is the one that we landed on as being the most advantageous for our school district. That can be changed as well if necessary, and certainly issues to do with timelines can easily be changed. There's an impact in every decision that's made, of course.
And I just want to finish, I wish I had started with this. This plan is so comprehensive. Our remote learning plan has been very comprehensive. Every time we've asked you to create a plan, you have come back with a plan that has been thoroughly vetted by people who will be impacted and then brought to us. So whichever way I vote, I want you to know that I so appreciate that, and appreciate that we're adhering to the timeline of reassessing this plan right now. So thank you both, all.
A lot of people, lots and lots of people involved, but thank you.
All right, I'm going to piggyback off what my colleague said, and I want to thank you, Dr. Glickman, and all of the staff and teachers for spending time away from friends and family in this, during this time to put together these plans, which really take a lot of thought and are so complex that we never quite arrive at a perfect solution. And I'd like to make a comment, and then I have 4 questions, if that's okay. Hybrid, we think of the term hybrid as like a new solution or a new way of learning, when really it's simply a combination of all the different learning styles that we as teachers and families come to know that our kids respond to. And so we're trying to figure out what that mix is and if we can reach all those learning styles. So I appreciate all the work that's done into that. And I've got 4 questions, and I think some of them were answered, and I just, for my own purpose and maybe for extra clarification for the public, the first one was in regards to the students with IEPs and 504 plans. And as looking through all of this, I see the information as allowing, maximum on-site time, synchronous learning, which I think is a positive. I also am seeing the health and safety protocols, which of course are part of each of them. But I do know that a lot of our students with IEPs and 504s may have challenges either sensorially or medically with some of that stuff. And what I didn't, unless I didn't read it myself possibly, what are the steps to make sure that those students don't feel isolated if they can't wear a mask all day long, or if there's something that causes that type of issue in a hybrid learning situation?
Yeah, Heather, do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Thanks.
Can you hear me? I'm gonna take these off, I keep fogging up. This is a conversation of more about what the planning process is in the department, and I believe and across all other departments. Our real planning about those details specifically, because right now there are certainly considerations, and we know that they have to be embedded in our plan and our rollout, but it really is contingent on not just the proposal, but the adoption of a plan. So we can then evaluate the space allocation needs and the time allocation needs to really facilitate all of those sensory needs. What are allowances with motor breaks and those sensory tools? What kind of instruments do we need to use? Where we are adhering to safety guidelines with proper cleaning between use. And all of those parameters, those specific details are really contingent on what kind of structure we can create after this plan is proposed.
All right, thank you. You mentioned a little bit too about the potential for classroom reorganization if students can't be, paired with their existing teacher. And I know that that's a major concern that I've heard in my part of the community, at least because in these initial 7 weeks, 8 weeks, they have developed those relationships, even in the remote learning environment. Can you give a little bit more articulation to what is behind you said we definitely would try, and that is clear. I'm just wondering how that all works out, and if it's solely dependent on who's available and how that might work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to begin by stating that the concern about moving students into other classrooms is shared widely by teachers, administrators, and parents, and it's something that we very deeply wish to avoid. But we felt that it was important that people know that it's possible. I'm going to talk about kindergarten last and talk more about what's more likely in grades 1 through 8. It's very closely linked to the possibilities of staff needing to be off-site, and that goes to Christy's question. We know we have staff that cannot be on site for one reason or another. So if the answer were every child is going to stay with his or her current teacher, and there's a teacher who can't be on site at all, well, then that teacher can't be on site, right? So the options are to provide that teacher with some kind of a remote opportunity, or to say, with great regret, we don't have a spot for you for the rest of this year, and grant some kind of a leave of absence. In that second option, which seems like a very bad option regarding the morale and care of our staff, we would still have to hire another teacher, right? Because the teacher still can't be there. So it is a really complicated puzzle piece when we have staff who cannot be on site. If there are, and so if we're looking for remote opportunities for those people, that could mean moving some students around so that there is a remote opportunity for that teacher, and some other teachers moved into a hybrid classroom. None of that is what we want to have happen, but we know it might happen. I want to go back to kindergarten for a moment, because when we talked about that model of having some students at home and some students on site, in kindergarten, it looked like maybe about half of our students, and please don't quote me on that, I don't have the data in front of me, but let's say roughly half of our kindergartners, the families are choosing a remote setting. Well, we really can't expect that our kindergarten teachers are going to be teaching students in front of them on a Google Meet and students at home. That feels really difficult. And so in that case, we could be looking at shifting students maybe from AM to PM, or we could be creating full remote classes, especially if we have some kindergarten teachers who need a remote setting. So I know that that was a long, complicated answer, and it's because it's a long and complicated problem.
Thank you, it helps.
Okay.
And then I guess my last two questions really can be combined. And I'm just curious too about another comment that's come up a lot in people who've approached me is that idea of doing the learning in the classroom with the headphones on in front of the screens in the classroom versus, kind of a traditional in the classroom experience versus the remote experience. And I'm just wondering a little bit more about that. Is the use of the headphones strictly related to sound and technology issues? Because I know that I likely am going to be teaching hybrid soon, and I don't know that we'll be using headphones, but I'm wondering if it's just something that's a little bit more relevant in the elementary grades and might be. And how is that going to differentiate the teacher in his or her ability to teach?
Okay, so I want to answer this question two ways. I want to answer exactly what you asked, but then I also want to answer another layer of it that I think might be also what you're asking. We'll see if I'm right. So the headphones specifically is all about sound. Absolutely, it's about sound. We're being careful with our mics here, and we're not even on a Google Meet, right? We know that, and we've experienced, Jim and I, and you have, Stephen as well, when we can't be in the same space together right. So that's about sound. But I also want to talk for a moment about a question that we keep getting asked, which is, why are we even having the students in the classroom on the Google Meet? Is that part of what you're asking too? Or was that just your
Definitely,
next?
it's,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So I want to talk about our teachers for a moment. So let's really think about what has happened over the past 6-7 months. We all went home, nobody was prepared for it, and our teachers had to, on a dime, learn about remote teaching. And that was really hard, and they did an amazing job. A lot of the instruction we know in the spring was asynchronous because we weren't ready. We weren't ready to do what we're doing now. Then over the summer, we got ready, and our teachers learned even more about how to use a Google Meet to teach synchronously. And they're doing an amazing job. Talk to them and you will find out how difficult it is. It's unbelievably difficult for them. What we didn't want to do is say to our teachers, okay, you're coming back on site, you're going to have some students in front of you and some students at home, and guess what? Here's a bunch of new technology for you to mess with. We did not want that for our teachers. And I'm saying this so delicately because I don't want to be insulting or dismissive of any other school districts, because everybody is doing the best they can. But we all know people in other districts that really did do exactly that. They loaded up their teachers with a whole bunch of new things. Students at home are, for example, streaming into the classroom. So they're using video cameras in the room. They're streaming into the classroom, and the teacher has to teach, this is a perfect example, teach to the students in front of them, kind of old school method, but also have to be watching the kids on the screen. Sometimes I'm talking to you, sometimes I'm talking to the kids on the screen. I know people that have 3 or 4 different screens going at one time for that. We did not want that for our teachers. And so that is why we have told them the expectation is that it's a Google Meet, because you're already used to that. Not saying it's easy, but they're used to it. And we know that there is a way using, as we talked about before, the headphones and muting to begin with, or children muting themselves. The teachers will be able to do that. They'll be able to have all of their kids on their screen, and they'll actually probably be, well, there's my screen, be, what's the word I'm looking for? Projecting, thank you, projecting onto the screen. They can see all of their kids, some of whom are actually in front of them as well, right? But they'll also be up there. They can talk to them all at once. Then there will be times where they can say, okay, students in the classroom, close up your meet, and they'll just work with the kids on the screen. Sometimes they'll walk around the classroom in a very careful, socially distanced way and support students in the classroom as well. We also know, watching our teachers, watching how quickly they adapted to what was going on in last spring and how quickly they learned what they needed to do this fall, that frankly, what I just described to you might be kind of unsatisfying to some of them, at which point they may say, you know what, I need to do this a little bit of a different way. I need to, and we'll help them with that. And there may be more, okay, everyone close your screens. I'm going to have myself, students can see me. I'm going to talk to all of you, and I'm going to talk to these students as well. But the hope was that by doing it, keeping the Google Meet, the platform would be the easiest transition for our teachers. Anything you want to add? I talked a long time. Okay.
That helps, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Christy Braden?
Right. The safe centers are a sticking point for me. So, and that I've been personally trying to figure out some solutions as well, but I just want to check in to see if there's anything from your end progress to report, because I don't have any, unfortunately.
Yeah. This is a difficult topic because we're really proud of our Safe Center. And I just have to mention that as recently as today, I was on a call with all Lake County superintendents, or all that were there. And one of the superintendents was talking about how they stole information from our Safe Center. They pulled parts of our plan for their own Safe Center. We're really proud of it. And we know it's supporting our students. We do not see how it can be open in its current form. We are hoping that we might be able to come up with a way to open it for the families that are currently in it, knowing that we believe many of the students that would be in the Safe Center, the families would select hybrid learning for them, which would mean there would be 2 days a week when those students would be pulled out of the Safe Center and be in their classrooms. So we would be looking at a smaller group of students. Maybe we could house that in a school. Maybe we could split those students up and house them in a couple of schools. I will tell you, it does provide some challenges that are involved with staffing, that are involved in having enough space for both those students and the students who are just on site that day for hybrid learning, because we have to have lots of spaces for kids to move to if there is a if someone has to go home with symptoms, we have that whole protocol, but we're not giving up on it. We also need to know it might not be possible. And, that's why we sent it out that way, to say, we think we'd have to close it, but we will keep working on it.
Thank you. I appreciate the update, and just, my report is just that board members have been in conversation with the library as well as trying to be in conversation with Park District. So my efforts continue as well.
Thank you.
And I guess the other question, I agree. One is, was there a model that allowed for non-dual instruction, like remote and on-site at the same time?
Yes.
And what was kind of the deal breaker for that model?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the AMPM model. And so that was that, we went through that slide talking about why we selected against that. But the major factors for not doing the AMPM model for students in grades 1 through 8 really had to do with the reduction of synchronous learning, the idea that that would really be going backwards for our students who are currently getting a full day of synchronous learning and really would only be getting, for the most part, a half day or 2.5 hours, which would be even fewer than 2.5 hours. The fact that at elementary, we could not work out the detail of how we would get science and social studies taught because the classroom teacher would be doing English language arts and math and on site, and the kids would get science and social science at home, and how are we going to do that? And that was really difficult. And then the last matter is that, frankly, we were still considering it pretty hard. And then we started hearing about all of the, first of all, I was getting lots of emails from parents, by the way, begging us not to do that and telling me about how difficult that would be for their childcare needs. We heard of a district very nearby that proposed that plan, and it was very widely criticized, and that school district is back to the drawing board. And we didn't want to be back to the drawing board. So those were the main reasons. Anything else, Paul, you want to add? Okay.
I guess my last question is really trying to quantify the advantage of having kids sort of, in their Google Classroom on site. I understand that there's times when the teacher might be engaging just with the kids in the classroom, which is great, and, certainly not in the ways that we're used to with manipulatives and centers and stuff. And I think that's just a loss that we're all grieving. That's out of our control. But, when you think about, sorry, I'm very bad at this. When I think about, okay, my kid is gonna go to school, go through the whole thing of going to school, be on his Google Meets, get maybe, a little time here and there with the teacher, not on Google Meets. I'm trying to weigh the ROI of the value added of that compared to what would need to happen to get the kid there and safe and the teachers, all that. And so I just, I'm not asking you to give me a number or a calculation. I'm just trying to square that for myself. Like, is that value delivered of how we need to do it? And I totally understand why you're choosing to go that way. Is the value there? And I guess that's more the question that I'm asking myself than asking you to answer.
I was going to say, I think that that's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
And it is the question that is probably on just about everyone's minds.
Yeah.
And it's not one that I can answer for you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. And those are all my questions. I just, I want to reiterate what Christy Miller said, that I don't know if we're there yet. I have every confidence and trust that we will get there, and I have confidence and trust in this administration to get us there. And if we keep working at it and working together on the same team, we will get there. Thank you.
Tamika Nash, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Reitman. I guess first I want to confirm that you all can hear me clearly.
Did you say
Can you all hear me clear? Can you all hear me clearly?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So first, I just want to start by thanking Dr. Glickman and the reopening team for the energy and effort put into this comprehensive proposal. Many of my colleagues have already presented a lot of the questions that I had prepared to ask, but I did have a couple others. So the first thought is just the school infrastructure is just really not built for social distancing. It's meant to be this congregate, intimate setting where our children come to learn and play and grow together. And I'm not clear on how we have planned for logistically safety protocols. So one of the things of concern is around mask management. Understanding how is the teachers going to be able to affect classroom learning, but also mask management throughout the day. I have tried personally just to test it out, just wearing a mask all day. And it's a challenge. And I'm just curious, probably rhetorically, if anyone in our community has attempted to do that, because it's a challenge. Layer on those that have pulmonary, respiratory, underlying conditions, it makes it a little bit unimaginable for me. So I guess my first question is just, and I know Dr. Glickman, you've entertained a lot of my questions extensively, and I appreciate that. I'm still wrestling with how we would manage that both in school, in class, and also through our bus, the students, the 600 plus students that would be taking bus transportation. With the social distancing requirements on the bus, what does that then mean to the number of buses that we may need to contract with to ensure, would we expect to have increased costs to mobilize those students, and fewer number of students would be on the bus? So I guess I'll stop there. That's my first question with regards to mask management, both on-site, in the classroom, through the hallways, in the bathrooms, on the bus.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a college try, okay? And you'll let me know if I've missed something, all right?
Okay.
Okay, so absolutely there are many logistical questions or concerns with all of this. The good news is, we have seen samples of school districts doing this. And in fact, just yesterday, Mr. Vipond and I took a field trip to another school district that has opened for on-site learning, has opened for hybrid learning, and we were able to see that. We were able to see the dots on the floors where kids know these are the places to stand. We've been talking quite a lot about bathroom procedures, hallway procedures. In some schools, but not all, we will be able to assign hallways that are one-way only, so students are not even passing them each other. We can't pull that off everywhere. At Avon, if you only have one way, you get to a window and then you're done, right? You gotta turn around. So it's not always going to work, but those are some things that we're doing. I will promise you that our principals are hard at work on all of those building-specific logistics, because it does vary building by building. You asked about mask wearing. I can share with you that we've been very successful in the Safe Center with that. So it's been a nice little microcosm, a tiny little group of students, about 60 students. And, do we have students who we have to work with to remind them with their masks? Yes, mostly young students, but most of them, they're in it. And Heather, were you there this week? Is that right, or last week?
I was not, but last week, yes, I try to get there at least once a week.
Yeah, do you have any comments to make about, because I wasn't there in
We've had the rare occasion where a child has struggled, and we've put together some reinforcement and some motivation for them, and worked out a plan, and it's doing really, all of the students overall are doing really, really well.
Absolutely. Regarding the buses, I want to address two things that I think I heard you ask about. The first is mask wearing on the buses. So indeed, students are expected to wear their masks on the bus. The driver has to drive. So it is true that, that could be a difficulty on the bus. We will, continue working with kids with that expectation. I gave an explanation that I think was probably pretty difficult to understand about what it would be like on the bus. I'm going to try to say it a different way. So siblings would be seated together, and then we would be doing every other seat, and then using, some students in the aisle, some students at the window, so alternating that way as well. Our bus capacity would be much smaller. At one point, I actually had hoped that we would be able to commit to families that doing that, we could keep our buses, our students 6 feet apart on a bus. In my most recent connection with the bus company over the weekend, it does not look like we can make that commitment. The bus, ISBE and IDPH say that you can have 50 kids on a bus. Well, 50 kids on a bus is definitely not social distance, and we're not going to do that. So I believe we're looking at a capacity of mid-20s, low 30s on a bus, but students might not be 6 feet apart. And so families that are choosing the bus will need to know that. Did I answer your questions?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that, Dr. Glickman.
Students into the school if we don't know that they're not COVID negative?
Right, so if I understood the plan, so the children would be screened once they got off the bus at school. And then they would be brought into the school for someone to pick them up. Is that correct?
Oh, okay. So now I understand. So first, let me start with this. Before anybody puts their child on a bus or sends their child to school, they'll be required to do the self-certification process using an app that will be providing. So all of our people who are sitting here today, they had to sign off that they were symptom-free, and that's the kind of thing that parents will have to do. But as children are entering the school, their temperatures will be taken. We know that there are inaccuracies with thermometers. And anybody who's been experiencing, has been going in and out of buildings anywhere, sometimes it just has an unusual read. If a child has a fever, the child has come off the bus, now someone takes their temperature, and it looks like they have a fever, we need to bring them into the school, and we need to do it for 2 reasons. 1, we want to take their temperature again inside. 2, we need to do something with that child. We can't just put them back on the bus. So they have to come into the school, and they would at that point go into the quarantine room, and we would be calling parents. But Tamika, if you are asking, is there a risk because they have walked through the office? Yes, that's true. There is a risk because they walked through the office.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think I can bake my last 2 questions together because part of what I've also been wrestling with is just losing the momentum that the students have gained since we first went into this mode in the spring. I think that the teachers have done head and shoulders a phenomenal job from the spring to opening up in the fall. And I really feel like the children, and I know this isn't true for everyone, but I do feel like the children are making real connections with their teachers, with their classmates. I do believe, not only for me personally, but just engaging with others in the community, that their children are making those real connections as well, that teachers are very intentional about having the children get up and move and go take a walk for recess or choice PE that allows the kids to go out and bike for a few minutes. So I'm concerned with the potential loss in the continuity between students and teachers if students choose to go hybrid and then the teacher assignments are reassigned, or for some reason, if there's exposure in the schools, then the children may need to go back to remote, the ebbs and flows of it. Earlier, you had shared when the teacher reassignments was brought up that it's possible that teachers would be potentially, or students would be reassigned. I guess when you say possible, do you have a sense of what's the likelihood that if a child is remote today, the parents choose for them to be remote? Do we have a sense for the impact, the likelihood of teacher reassignment, and do the teachers have a choice in whether they're able to option into remote versus hybrid?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the choice. Maybe that was the hardest question. So some of our staff members will have their own health conditions that they could provide a doctor's note that says that they would be at significant risk of being on site. And under ADA, American Disabilities Act, we are required to provide accommodations for those people. Those accommodations might be a remote setting. It might be something else, and it might be allowing someone to take a leave. So our first layer of what we would be doing in those situations would be trying to provide remote settings for those people if we can. Then there are people who have other reasons why they'd like a remote setting. Perhaps because they live with somebody who has one of those high-risk conditions. Perhaps it's an age-related issue. We want very much to be able to give those people remote settings if we can. But then we are back to balancing that how many students are being moved out of one setting to another. So I greatly regret that I'm not able to give you a clean, clear answer. I don't think we are giving people a choice of what they want. I think we are asking them, what do they need? And we're doing the very best we can to find a way to accommodate that need. So that's an answer to that question. You asked about students choosing, what's the likelihood of students needing to move? And I want to add in a piece of information that I haven't shared, I don't think yet. We've been talking about the survey that we intend to send out to families if the board votes yes on this plan. And we have added in an extra question. So parents will have the opportunity to select that they want remote learning for their child or that they want hybrid for their child. That's a given. But we're also going to add in another question, and I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but basically it gives people an opportunity to check a box if the selection that they made would require the change of a teacher. That's more important it will really be for fourth grade and down, because 5 and up, there are students see so many teachers, so there's no way that we could accommodate that question, really. But for grades 4 and down, we're going to ask them that question, because for some families, if their desire for a child to be remote is health related, and they feel like, I don't want my child to move teachers, but if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen, we need remote, then we'll give them that. Other families may select remote, but say, but you know what, if that means we have to move teachers, I don't want it. So we're trying to gather as much information from people so that we can do the very best job we can to meet all of those needs.
Thank you for that, Dr. Glickman. I know that just part of the conversation in the community, the most concern that I've heard is children that are in K2 on an IEP, a 504 plan. And I was happy to hear when my colleague Christy Miller asked, is there room to consider additional enhancements or modifications to the plan? Because at least if there is a shift to go to hybrid, I certainly want our most pressing and critical demographic of students to get that on-site, in-person learning sooner versus later. So I just thank you for the work that you and the rest of the administrators and team have done to bring this plan forward. That concludes my questions, Dr. Glickman.
Thank you, Tamika. Stephen Strack?
Sure, thank you. Just a few things actually. A lot of my questions I had have already been asked. Just a clarification. So a vote in favor of this plan is not necessarily a guarantee that it'll be implemented in November, because it'll depend on where the indicators are at that time. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it again?
I'm just seeking clarification that a vote in favor of the plan is not necessarily a guarantee that it will be implemented in November. And because that depends on where the indicators are when we get to that point in time. Is that correct?
That's correct. So a vote for the plan in its entirety, including the timeline and just everything to do with the plan, would mean that we would be getting going with the expectation that we are starting with on-site learning beginning on November 2nd, and depending on the grade level moving forward. And then if the metrics are not met, then we would have to push it back. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
What is the deadline for making the decision to proceed? Is there a date?
Yeah. So those are conversations with the Lake County Department of Health, and we
Mhm.
are unbelievably lucky that they are our partners, and they are on the other end of my phone constantly. And it really depends on what the metric is and how it's changing. So, we would want a good, well, let me say this. According to the recommendations that they have, you should be in I wish we could put that slide back up, but don't do it, Chris. We're not going to mess with it. We should be in a phase for 10 days before moving to the next phase.
Mhm.
So theoretically, if you remember that slide, there was one indicator that was red. That was the COVID-like hospital admissions. We would really want that one to be in green for 10 days before we could, or yellow, before we could move into hybrid.
Mhm.
But I also want to point out that the Lake County Department of Health was a little bit less invested in schools following that particular metric.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
You understood that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 10 days is the hope, 10 days
Okay.
before, but conversations with the department often.
The issue with the safe centers, is that primarily, would you say it's primarily logistical, or, is it a sort of a combination of funding and personnel? If we allowed for more funding to bring in the people that we need to staff it, would that help? Is there anything that we can do?
Yeah, well, it's all logistical, and those are logistics, right? For sure.
Mhm.
I will tell you that at the moment, that program is headed, there's always an administrator on site, but it's headed by the dean at GMS. She's done an unbelievable job. If we're back on site, GMS needs to have their dean back, for sure. So, we would have to work out who's in charge of the program, wherever it is. So that is one of the pieces. Space is a significant concern. I would also like to share that, there is the potential of some options related to Right at School. Right at School could potentially help us if we were able to find the space for the program. But keep in mind then, Right at School is for cost. We have been providing this program to our families free of cost. Right at School isn't going to be able to do that. But that is another option that we can look into. So I guess that was a long answer to your question. Could we look at hiring more staff to run that program, I suppose that is a possibility.
And another question around that would we be able to find people? I mean, there's already staffing shortages and everything anyway, so
Exactly. That's a
yeah,
difficulty.
I know that would be a problem. So,
That's a
okay.
difficulty. And another, I want to add one more piece of the staffing difficulty with the Safe Center. So we have staff members who are devoted, their work days are devoted to being in the Safe Center. We know that continuing with remote learning for some students and having other students in the hybrid setting is a further stressor on our staff. And particularly at the lower grades, we have done, I think, a really nice job of assigning additional staff members to those classrooms so that the staff members are available to pull small groups, to help with things. We're going to want to continue to do that. And so, it would be optimal if we could put those staff members who are currently supporting the Safe Center back in the mix of supporting students as a part of hybrid and remote learning. If we can't, we'll figure it out, but that is another staffing piece that's important.
Okay. And then lastly, regular flu season is coming up. Current numbers around the infection rates and everything around COVID-19 are improving in some places and getting worse in others. Wisconsin being right next door is a problem. So based on current numbers and where they're heading and the coming regular flu season, I mean, do you think, what do you, I guess it's hard to estimate really, but I mean, do you anticipate that we're going to be back in full remote learning before the end of the next trimester because of bad numbers? And if that's the case, I mean, are we, I just want to make sure that we're prepared to, on short notice, which could be like from one day to the next, that we're prepared to flip back to full remote if we need to. So are we going to be able to make a quick change if we have to? And what do you think the chances of that are?
Okay, you asked two questions, and I'm going to start by answering the one I can answer, which is the second one. So part of the strength of the plan that we put together is to be able to flip back into remote learning quickly. When you think about our 1st through 8th grade students, they will all be experiencing the remote learning experience 3 days a week. So they will not lose their connection and their skills to that at all. For kindergarten, we were intentional about saying, okay, they're going to be on site for half days, Mondays and Tuesdays, and Thursdays and Fridays, and they're going to be remote on Wednesdays. Well, we did that for 2 reasons. One was for the cleaning of the room, but frankly, if it was just kindergarten, we would figure out a way that we could keep kindergarten on site and get that room deep cleaned also. But we wanted, for exactly the reasons that you're asking, Mr. Strack, for our kindergartners who are on-site learners, really, to keep that connection to what it is to be on a Google Meet, what it is to be at home learning, so that if and when we do have to transition back into remote learning for a time period, they are prepared, and there's not a relearning of those skills. I can't answer your first question. You're asking
Yeah, I
for
know. I mean,
predictions, and I can't do it for you. I got to tell you, I've learned an awful lot about the metrics, but my predictive skills aren't there.
already.
Okay.
I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Jason LaCroix?
Boy, one of the drawbacks of going last is that all of the questions have been asked and answered. I did want to comment, though, I thought this plan was clearly well thought through. It's the response to a terrible situation. It's not to say it's a plan that's going to satisfy everybody or even half the people. And I just think that I wanted to express that I thought it was very well thought out, and I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it. I did want to ask a couple of clarifying questions. Dr. Glickman, you mentioned that there'd be an additional question in the questionnaire to the parents. And I just wanted to clarify, does that guarantee that if they check that box that, you know, if my choice will cause my child's teacher to change, I might want to make another choice. So in essence, you're saying you guarantee that any parent that chooses, they can keep their teacher if they want to. Is that true?
The word guarantee is pretty dangerous.
Right.
A teacher could decide that they're going to, you know, we may find that we can't provide a remote setting for a teacher. And so the family may be saying, I want to stay with that teacher no matter what, and that teacher could end up taking a leave of absence. We know that we have every year teachers who leave for one reason or another, take a leave for a wonderful reason, like having a baby. So I back gingerly away from the word guarantee, but all efforts is something that we can do.
That is fair.
Okay.
That's fair. I had another question about the safe centers. I hear you saying things like, you know, we're going to keep working at it, keep working at it. I'm going to ask you to put on your prognostication hat again. I mean, what are the chances that we're going to be able to make this work? I think this is an important aspect to it. I think there's, you know, people who really are counting on that.
So I think if we look at the fact that we currently, I'm just going to do numbers for a second. So we have roughly 60 students that we're currently serving in the Safe Center. If we don't look at adding any more students, and that's important, I want to talk about that in a moment. If we don't look at adding any more students, we could imagine that in any one day, we would have maybe 30 students, maybe, at the Safe Center. We could probably accommodate that in a couple of schools using a couple of classrooms, if we have the space. I would think that there is a good possibility that we could do that. If we look at doing it, maybe not even using our staff, but hiring in staff from Right at School, if that turns out to be a possibility, and that's another conversation I need to have with our friends from Right at School. That could make it even more possible because we would not be using our staff. So, Jason, I think it's a better yes, we will keep working on it, and I think there are some possibilities in there, as opposed to we just don't think it can work. We'll keep working on it.
That'll have to be good enough for now, I guess.
What was that?
Also, the idea of Wednesday, right? Wednesday would be a day where you'd have higher attendance, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But I will tell you that Right at School has already told us that they can offer a program on Wednesdays. So
okay.
That's a possibility for us too.
All right, thank you. I think with that and with the other questions that have been asked, I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, unfortunately, I've been taking a lot of notes, so you may have a few extra questions from me. Could you briefly just describe the level of involvement we had with the Department of Health and ISBE regarding coming up with a plan or being involved in the development of the metrics?
Sure. Well, as far as ISBE goes, I'm just on the receiving end of that. So I don't talk with them directly. They send us things and we figure out how we're going to do them. So that's the honest truth about ISBE and our involvement. IDPH, they have sent 1, 2, or 3 high-level representatives to every one of my weekly superintendent, Lake County superintendent meetings since probably the middle of the summer. So, they will answer every single question we ever ask, and they keep us so up to date about what is going on. As well, we had 2 those two task force meetings that I mentioned earlier with District 127, we had a representative from IDPH there. So, they don't look at it as their role to help create a plan. That is not a job that they want to have, nor do they state that, that they are giving us requirements. They will work with us, they give us recommendations, but how we follow those recommendations is up to the school district. They will work with us very closely if we have to contact trace for, for a case. And I point blank asked at the meeting on Monday night about this topic. I very carefully, that task force meeting, I very carefully asked, if we vote on a hybrid plan and the metrics are not looking right, what do we do? Do we call you and talk it through? And they said, yes, we will work with you to help you make a decision about whether or not you should open your schools. Did that answer? Were you looking for
No,
different information?
that answered. I guess I was trying to get to, my personal feeling is neither the Illinois School Board Association or ISB or IDPH would allow us to put together a plan that would be unsafe for anybody. Because they would be looking at the metrics we were using and they would tell us those would work, yes or no.
Not exactly. So we don't submit our plan to them for approval. And in fact, Lake County Department of Health, I remember hearing from some school districts that they tried that, like, hey, look at our plan, will you approve it? They won't do it. They don't want to be in that position. So it's up to us to say we are closely following all the requirements of ISB to bring you a plan, and I can tell you that we are doing that.
Okay. So another question that I did see out there that we got in a few emails, and first off, I will say for all those that did send in emails and that I've seen on public comments, I do appreciate the difference in the tone this time around than the last time around towards the board members and the administrators. It was much more gentler and far less attacking of us, which was greatly appreciated, I think, by everybody in the room. But with that being said, one of the questions was with Right at School, if they're going to do a before or after program, would they be then following the guidelines that our school district has set up for them and for our students?
So they actually have to follow other guidelines because they're actually under DCFS. And so they have very stringent guidelines, but they are not exactly the same as the school district. And in fact, one of those guidelines, and this is the only one that I can tell you off the top of my head is different, is that we know we can have 50 people in a space, right? 50 people in space. Under DCFS, they can only have 15 people in a space. So, they couldn't have a whole big, lunchroom full of kids. They only can put 15 kids in there.
Okay, next one was some of this is an equity issue for those students that have different allergies, nuts, peanuts, and all that, and trying not to single them out for lunch period and being able to eat in their classrooms and so on and so forth. I know we've had tree and nut-free classrooms in the past and tables at the lunchroom. Would we consider the possibility of a temporary order or rule that would make the district during this COVID time completely tree and nut-free type of an atmosphere so that we kind of eliminate that equity?
Yeah.
It might be difficult, but we do it for classrooms. Is it possible that maybe we expand that? It may not be possible. I'm just trying to work through some of the issues that I see out there and that we may run into.
Sure. Well, I want to start by saying that we are working to avoid having lunch in classrooms at all. That's the first piece of information to share for a few reasons. One is exactly what you're pointing out, because we don't want allergens brought into a classroom and then a child with that allergy to then have to, yeah, you can have the child with the allergy leave the classroom for lunch, but that's an equity issue, right? Just sending that one child out doesn't feel good to anybody. And then they come back into the classroom and there are allergens there. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to avoid having kids in the classroom, eat in the classroom. Also, it's a supervision issue, right? If you have students eating in classrooms and they're all eating in classrooms, we have to figure out how we're gonna have all of those children supervised in classrooms. We actually are looking at using, we're sitting right here in a multi-purpose room, using possibly tables or possibly desks, which is actually what we have in the Safe Center. Desks are just spaced apart, 6 feet apart, for students to eat in. Either way, even if we have schools where we have to have some students eating in the classroom, our intent is that, well, we know we can fit some classes in the lunchrooms or perhaps the learning center or perhaps the gym. We would have the classes where there's a child with an allergy eat in those spaces. And then, kids are used to having a peanut-free table. That's kind of old news. We've done that for a long time. I also want to address one other piece, your question, Jim, about about just telling all families that you can't bring in any peanut or whatever the allergens are. Not only would that be very difficult to manage, but that actually brings its own equity issues to it. For many families, peanut butter is a pretty inexpensive protein. And at this difficult time, it would be hard to tell our families who are struggling financially that they need to take that one off their list of things that they can ever send their children with. So we'd like to avoid that too.
If I could add to, in all of our work with our allergy building processes and policies, we worked very closely with Lurie's, who highly recommends do not sell yourself as allergen-free because it can create a false sense of security. And then you don't have safety measures in place to keep children safe ultimately.
Did you understand? You're kind of muffled. Did you
know, I don't
understand
know.
that? I don't know why you
No,
are.
I understood what she said.
Okay.
If you did the entire district as a
Right.
nut and tree-free zone, you could create a sense of false security for
Yes,
anybody who
correct.
does have that issue.
Correct.
I understood what you said.
Sorry, I'm gonna figure that out.
I gotten very good at listening.
We've learned what the mask not to wear next time. Yeah.
Okay, so now my last two are just kind of I think are real quick questions. School supply lists, do those need to go back out, or did we have school supply lists at the beginning of the year that everybody should basically have already?
Yeah, we actually embedded the school supply list in the plan. People should already have all of those supplies. We're not looking at adding supplies. We added, make sure you have a mask, make sure you have a water bottle, those kinds of things. But no, we're not looking at adding. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just know that the schools have already started off with, or not the schools, but the stores have already started off with the Halloween and probably Valentine's Day pretty quickly. Stuff in their stores, and it's getting harder to find some supplies. So that's why I was kind of asking.
So the supply list that we sent out at the beginning of the year actually had 2 columns. So it said the things that we need right now for remote learning and the things that we would need for on-site instruction. We did encourage families to get all of those, and we encouraged just because of price, because we know they were easier to get. I also will speak that if there are things that students aren't able to get right now, it's okay. We're not going to go to issues with a student who hasn't brought in the right glue stick or the right kind of pencil. If the school needs to make those up, we'll find a way. And we've talked about that we just have to have that understanding.
We have to have a little flexibility. So
We have to have a lot of flexibility.
yeah, well, yeah, okay. So this is the flexibility question that I have for you.
Okay.
Face masks. I know as you look around on the internet and all that, the options for face masks have changed dramatically, from cloth masks like these and 95 masks to even now they're coming out with newer ones that are all clear plastic ones that are here. They're not the shields that hang down, but they're actually kind of hug the face. Is there flexibility into the types of face coverings that they can have, or is it strictly going to be a cloth mask?
Heather, do you want to say anything about this or not so much? What'd you say? Go ahead.
We've been working a lot with the Lake County Health Department to really discuss mask wearing and appropriate mask usage. Ultimately, any variety of mask that is snug to the face is required by ISB. That includes over the nose and over the mouth. The use of face shields and additional PPE like double masking, KN95s, N95s, gowning and gloves are really reserved for those who are potentially interacting with students who are showing symptoms of COVID, as well as custodians that may be cleaning those spaces. But essentially, there is no other recommendation about material necessarily. We can't have face shields in lieu of masks. It does have to be a mask tight to the face.
But if the question is also, can it be one of those where there's like a plastic in front of them? At this time, I don't know the answer to that question. I think the answer is yes, but we'll find that out.
We have been approved to use those clear masks for specialized services, and that we purchase masks that are tight to the face and full, and it's a full clear shield, and those are for especially students with perhaps hearing impairments and for their teachers so they can see the mouths and have some equitable communication that way, and other similar scenarios.
Yeah, those are the type of, that I was looking at. Is there a possibility that the students would be looking at using those as well? You know, is that in kind of the flexibility part of this?
Perhaps, I think that would be an individualized decision based on the needs of the students. Yeah.
Okay,
That's it.
like I don't mind then. Okay, so we are next going to move into the public comments portion of this meeting. Dr. Glickman will open the Google form on the website for the, okay, so, okay, for people to ask their questions or make their comments. And then after the public inside the room here makes their comments, we will then move to the online comments. So for those that are going to put together a comment online, we ask it to be something that could be read within the 2-minute time frame that we're going to hold the in-person people to the same standard, that Dr. Glibman can read it in 2 minutes. Hopefully, by changing the format, we've answered the majority of the questions, and we have given you a little more clarity, but I know there will always be more questions. So the first person I have on for comments would be Amy, is it McLester? Please.
Okay, all right. So first of all, thank you, and Dr. Glickman. The first thing I want to do is really thank the teachers of Grayslake, right? So appreciate everything that they have done from March until June and from August till now, okay? So thank you. We have 2 children, so appreciate everything that you guys are doing. I guess my direction or my question is to the board and actually this task team to put together, right? So we're all in this. What are we going to do if it gets negative? What are we going to do when the negatives or when the numbers continue to get high, right? I guess I ask you guys to look at it and say, we have to slowly continue to move beyond this scared, right? Let's arm our children with thinking that schools are safe. I have a 9-year-old that is scared to death to go to school because he doesn't know if it's safe, right? I get into a car every day and I put a seatbelt on. I don't talk on my phone because that's what I can do to minimize my likelihood of having a car accident. So I ask you guys to look at this plan. I am all for in person. I want you guys to look at it and say, what is the right thing to do when the numbers look good in February and we can be in person full time? What is the right thing for our children and our teachers? I appreciate the hybrid model, and yes, right, we should do hybrid to slowly get back to in person. But I feel like we have failed as a community to say, right now, we're going to do hybrid and we're going to do in person with teachers, teaching in person, and teacher and kids at home. This week, my son and his teacher had to take 3 breaks because 4th graders are taking multiple pictures of themselves and putting it on the web, right? So I ask you guys as board members to actually look and see what the challenges are that these teachers are going to experience teaching in person and remote students. Think about planning ahead of time, to dedicating staff to remote for the people that want to keep their kids remote, for the people that want in person, right? Give that option with all of us understanding. If the metrics drive us backwards, that is not for us to decide. That's for the health department. We did it in March. So I ask you guys to consider that before you move forward with the approval of this plan. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nicola Case. I have a 2nd grader and at Meadowview and a 7th grader at GMS. I'm going to start with something positive that I wanted to share with the board and our community. Last Friday, our micro classroom was at my house. We have 4 kids that come to my house. We share and we rotate houses. I was in the family room and the 4 kids were all in the kitchen. I hear a woman's voice in a Southern accent. And I know it wasn't Mrs. Hannigan reading. I know it wasn't Mrs. Hannigan. Someone was reading the book to the kids. To my surprise, it was Dr. Glickman. She was reading a book that was about a cowgirl, and she was talking in a Southern accent just like this. So the kids were laughing and smiling, and she was also singing part of the book too. I just wanted to share that because I thought that was amazing that you did that. My kids loved it. The micro classroom loved it. I was laughing. It was funny. So thank you for that. I also wanted to share with the board and the community what my family is doing during this remote learning. When the decision came to the schools to be closed, we started a micro classroom for our 2nd graders with 4 children. My friends came up with an idea that we would, and we started planning for it in the summer. And so we decided to take our 4 kids that were in 2nd grade and rotate our houses. So a couple days they're at my house, a couple days they're at someone else's house. And that has really worked because last year my daughter Brindley, she did really good in the beginning of remote learning, but it did not turn out so good. So this micro classroom is a blessing for Brindley, for myself, for my family, for this other family. And I just wanted to share, if there's opportunity for you guys to do micro classroom, I highly recommend that. I do have questions. I know you guys can't answer, but so I guess I'm not understanding why we have to go to a 2-day on, 2-day off when there are so many schools in our community. Prince of Peace, all the Catholic schools are in person, sorry. And they're safe. There has not been an outbreak. They have not had to shut down. They have not had to close down one classroom. My 7th grader, I was thinking about putting him into a private school because I was very concerned about him doing remote learning by himself. I'm okay with my daughter because we're in a group. So I did go to Prince of Peace and I talked with them, and I really liked their plan. And it's a smaller school, but they had a plan in place. And this plan, I just don't see it being feasible for being in the classroom, being remote, and then 2 days off. So I have a question for you, Dr. Glickman. When you visited that classroom or that class, did you also visit a school that was all in school, or did you just visit a school that was just remote, like half hybrid?
Right. So I was visiting a school that was a hybrid setting because that's the direction that we're moving in at the moment. And because we are following the metrics that say that we should first go from, or the recommendation from the Lake County Department of Health that talks about going from remote that we're in right now and hybrid and then to on-site. And because it was my understanding from our Board of Education that we were looking at a hybrid plan at this time. So that's what I visited.
The hand sanitizer that you guys are gonna require the kids to use, are you guys gonna make sure that that's not recalled? Because there are so many hand sanitizers that have been recalled. So I just want to put that out there. You don't have to answer that. And when did the teachers, this is from a person that asked me to ask these questions, and you don't have to answer them now. When did the teachers have to decide when they wanted to do, and what choices were given to them? Did they agree to this model, or did they even know about what the hybrid was when they made their choice? So that was someone that wanted me to ask that was coming here. And I think that's it.
Thank you. We have your email, so some of the questions that we don't answer now, Dr. Glickman will follow up with you. Next one, I have Nicole Bean.
So yeah, I'm going to echo what some of the other parents here said, which is fully supporting the teachers. They've been doing seriously an amazing job. I'm not somebody who wants fully our kids in person because I'm blaming anything else on anybody else. So I have 2 children at Meadowview. What I will say is, kind of echoing just some things too, is with the remote classroom, I have a child who hates being the center of attention. And one thing that's been really difficult in the remote setting is that, just like us as adults, staring into a computer, very awkward, very weird, but having a child who's afraid to be in the center of attention, literally having 30 eyes stare at him has been very difficult. Now, the teacher's been very understanding and been working with several students who have that, but just wanted to make sure, like, as we continue to do this hybrid and knowing that they're gonna be sitting at their computers again in front of in the classroom with the teachers, that's still an issue for some students and for some kids. One other story I wanted to share is I'm fully in favor of trying to get back into school. And like Amy said, just I guess the question is, what does it take to get back into school, right? You know, like Nicola said, there are other schools here, Westlake, St. Gilbert's, who've been in full time since day one. What does it take, right? And some other parents have asked me that, and I don't know the answer either. Once a vaccine comes, we know over half the people won't even take the vaccine. It's gonna be lots of time. This is something that we have to kind of move forward. This is not ever gonna go away. We know that, right? How do we make that next step in order to move that forward? And then kind of just lastly, again, and one other, story to share too, as we continue to try to figure out what the next model is, I have a neighbor who has a son who's in 1st grade, learning to read, very critical time. He's had the most difficult time where it's at a point where he is actually having to go to a counselor because of frustration and not having that one-on-one conversation. And it's become such a disruption, frustration in their family that I've actually told her to just pull him out and not have him go to school because it's been such a disruption for their family. So I guess, again, I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. The teachers have been doing amazing. I know they're working longer and harder, but I want to make sure that we are trying to figure out how to move in that next direction of the new normal, which I hate that term, but it is what it is, just to kind of see where that goes, because we can't keep going backwards and pulling in and out. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ashley Mahoney.
All right, so I, like everyone else, want to say thank you first to the teachers. They've been amazing, but also to the idea that we are coming up with a plan for hybrid. We are coming up with a plan to move forward and get our children back into our classrooms. As a parent and as a teacher, I understand how difficult this is on all of the parties involved. the board, the administration, parents, but also on our children. I think that that needs to be our focus. I heard a lot of questions about money. I heard a lot of questions about teachers. I heard a lot of questions about the logistics, but what about our kids? What about what is best for our children? And because we are still providing the option for families to choose remote, if somebody is nervous or fearful of the risks, if they have a condition that puts them more at risk, they still get to be safe and make their choice. But for the families whose kids are struggling emotionally and socially, like you have heard, keeping us remote doesn't help any of those families. And that's what I think we need to start looking at. The numbers in this community, the data that was given out supports us going back. And I sat here and I listened to everything that was said, and I truly felt like there was a lot of negativity on the plan. I think the plan looks amazing because it's a plan. It's going to move us forward, and we have to start somewhere. There is not a right answer. There is nothing that is going to be done or put in place that's going to make every person in this community happy. And I think that when we start realizing that, we can move forward quicker. Children are missing out on important things. I know that our teachers are providing an amazing education. They're providing amazing academics. I don't see the social emotional part being addressed as much as it could if there was those options for in-person. So much of the chatter on social media and even some of the questions that were asked by the board members tonight was, well, if they're still sitting on a computer, what's the point? Well, the point is they're still in the same room as their peers. My son rarely will unmute himself to talk to his peers, but I know in person he would be the first one talking to somebody else. I don't think that the connection between the teacher and the students through a screen is even close to the same. Even if it's the best teacher in the district, I just don't think it's going to be the same. Again, I know the teachers are working hard. I see it. And I think that that's important to keep in mind, but I know that in person could be better. I have a whole list of questions, and I'm sure that some of them have been addressed, so I'm going to try to kind of look and talk, but one of the things that I questioned, and I know that it's not going to go back and be changed, I don't think that at this point, but I was a little nervous listening to a plan for kindergarten through 8th grade. 5-year-old, because I have a kindergartner, a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old need vastly different things in their education. And best practices for kindergarten are not the same best practices for 7th or 8th grade. And so when we're looking at this plan, while I understand some of the reasonings for trying to go with what we're going with, I question if we're really meeting the needs of students in the best way we can. I have concerns about keeping everyone on their devices in the classroom just from a technology standpoint. I work in a school that's doing this, and we had to spend money to beef up our tech and all of those things, and I just am curious if that has been thought out. And also continuing to echo some things that were said, but if you vote to not go through with this or not move forward, are we back to the drawing board? Do we sit back at home for another 2 months? Like, the data, the metrics, the health department, they're all saying we should move forward. I think we need to be listening to the health professionals. 80% of our staff want to be back in the room. That's higher than even the community wanted. So our children are going to feel that. And I think that was something that, Christy Miller, you kind of mentioned about the kids feed off the teachers, right? And when the adults are feeling good, the kids feel good. And I 100% agree with you. But when you look at those percentages, with 80% wanting to be back, I think the kids will feel that. And I just want to, I swear I'm almost done. I have one quick thing. And I kind of said this. We know that there's not a plan that is going to make everyone happy. But I really ask everybody that's the decision maker, the voting individuals, to really consider the safety measures that have been given to us by the county. the health professionals. We have to move forward. We have to do something for our children and figure out the logistics. Thank you.
Mr. Weidman, I just wanted to clarify one thing about the 80%, just because, and you wouldn't know this based on the information that we provided. The question that we asked our staff, the context in which we asked our staff a question was, it is expected that the majority of our staff will be on site. And they had the opportunity to select, I expect that I will be on site, or I have an ADA reason why I may not be able to be on site. So I guess my point is the 80% isn't an indication of what teachers wanted to do or staff wanted to do. It was just an indication of whether or not they believed they had a condition or other reason why they really couldn't be on site. So just wanted to make sure you understood that.
Next, we have Dan Fry.
It's a tough one to follow. Can I take this off? Well, I'm social distanced, so I mean, it's very difficult to talk through this. I can't imagine being in the classroom, but I am a teacher in this district. I don't know if I'm the only one here that teaches in the district. No, I'm not. No, I'm not a teacher. But I went into teaching about 11 years ago, and the first thing I always heard was what's best for kids. And I don't hear any of that conversation. I'm against going back to school. I hear what the last woman had said, but I think that we're not ready. I don't think the staff is ready. I don't think we're taught. I don't think we're prepared to do that. I don't think we're prepared to teach 10 to 14 kids over here and have another dozen on the screen. I teach 7th grade. I can't imagine trying to come up with curriculum or a cohesive plan to teach Monday, Tuesday to some kids, Thursday, Friday to others that are in the room. Different things are going to happen on different days. I got so much to say with so little time. I just don't think that we're ready. I think that we'll be ready maybe later. I don't think we're ready to disrupt what the flow is we have so far. I think that it's going really well in a majority of classrooms. I do hear staff, we all complain to each other. I do wish some of the board members would ask staff directly those questions they had and not administration. And I'll speak out. I know some people would say I'm crazy to do this because my bosses are in the room, but I think that we have not been asked how we feel or what we want or what we think is right for our students. I'm one of those people who won't return to the classroom. I do have a medical issue. I have a reduced lung capacity. I have 100 and some kids. I teach a 6th grade class. I teach 4 7th grade classes, 3 different levels of math. They're gonna have to find another math teacher if you guys go back in the building. I hope there's a role for me, but I don't see it scheduling. I don't see it possible. I don't see a way for me to teach some 7th grade or some 6th grade or some 8th grade in the district, or especially in the building that I'm in. Now, in the younger grades, I feel that it's a little easier to probably do. You can move things around, much self-contained classroom. But in the middle school level, I think scheduling is an absolute nightmare. And with all the ifs that I hear and all the issues with any hybrid model, I've heard Dr. Glickman say repeatedly over and over and over again how no model is perfect. Then why are we going to go back to school for 2 days a week when we're still sitting in a screen? Okay. I still have struggle. I spent, part of the summer trying to figure out how this is going to work. I spent $1,000 of my own money buying equipment because the school's not going to provide it so I could teach math the best way possible to my students. I have an administrator student in my class right now. I have Heather Lorenzo's son in my room. We talk about lunch all the time. and the fact that we like mayo and not mustard. I mean, we do all these types of things. That's the rapport we can still have online. If he's on the screen and he's not in the classroom, I know my time is going to be for those kids that are with me that day. It's going to be natural, right? I'm going to lose him the 2 days he's not there when I'm teaching 2 other kids. This is if I was in the room, but I'm not going to be. But I'm just saying that I think I'm speaking for many other middle school teachers in that regard. I know I've emailed Dr. Glickman several times. We've had conversations through email. I know the metrics are the metrics, but the metrics say nothing how our kids are going to learn. There's no metrics on that. Okay, I believe what the health officials say. I don't disregard the science. I understand all that kind of stuff. I don't care. I know the safety of the school is going to be there. We're going to do whatever necessary. But kids are getting comfortable being home. A majority, not all. They like being there. I had 2 kids today. They said they're going to go back to school. They're excited. I tried to explain to them what school may look like. Very similar to what assistant superintendent had described what the day would look like. And they're like, what's the point of going back for 2 days? I don't want to do that. I'd rather stay home in the spinning chair I have and be comfortable and be close to the refrigerator. They have to put on regular clothes instead of being in their pajamas all day. These are comfort levels that our kids are getting used to, and they learn when they're comfortable. Right? I hate to make a parallel, it's kind of crude, but it's like house arrest versus jail. I would choose house arrest anytime and still be able to talk to whoever I can talk to via the web or the internet or the Google Meet or through FaceTime than be in prison. I'm not saying school's prison, but when you talk about 6 feet apart and you come into school and you raise your hand to go to the bathroom and you can't go over there, you can only do this, put your mask up, put your mask on, get some hand sanitizer. It sounds very rigid to me. That's not what I would want to be part of. And I just wish in the future the school board would ask staff questions. Right? We have the ability for surveys. Right? The survey that was put out was not about how we feel. There's nothing about how the teachers, what their morale is like in this district. And teachers across the country, right? And it's not about the teachers, it's about the students, but we directly affect them. If we don't feel well, we're not going to teach well. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't butcher the last name here too bad. Penny Gruszczowski?
Don't worry about it, it's cool. I got married. You should have taken my name. Much better. Hi, everybody. I was on the task force with Dr. Glickman, and I'll be honest, I think they've been doing a wonderful job. Wonderful job. And this task force thing was ridiculous. Like, I don't know how you fix this. I have 2 special needs kids. So I don't know, how you guys are doing. But for me, I have a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. And,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. Is that better? I normally have a really big mouth. So I just want to say, I think the remote learning has been going wonderful for us. And I was petrified. I called Heather Lorenzo and I was on a fit. Like, what's going to happen? How are my kids going to learn? What's going to happen to my kids? They can't do this. We need to go back to school. And now I'm standing here saying that I don't want my kids to go back to school. I'm not sure if I'm going to have my teachers. My kids are autistic. My kindergarten is nonverbal. How does he make this connection to another teacher if we have to lose that teacher? How do we teach a child when my son can't speak, my son can't hold a pencil, and those 2 teachers cannot hold my son's hands? How does that work? At least at home,
I can take care of my kid and I can do it for him and help him and direct him. I am lucky to have great teachers. I have wonderful teachers. And I don't want to get emotional, but I just want to say, I don't want them to get sick. I don't want them to not be able to be home with their children. I had coronavirus. I was in the hospital for 7 days. I don't want anybody to get it. It's awful. I should look at my list of stuff to say. Sorry, guys. Okay. The first thing for me is our teacher interruption. I am not guaranteed that my autistic child will have his STEAM teachers. I know there's not been much said about the MILE program here at all, and I know that we're not the majority, and I know that you guys are working the hardest you can. So please don't take it as a slap in the face, because I really, really do think you guys are doing great. But I know you build a relationship with your teachers. Our teachers are not comfortable to come back to work. And I really think that that is something that we need to consider. My children would be in a room with full PPE. They would have a teacher with a gown, gloves, a mask, and a shield. I don't think that my 5-year-old autistic child wants to go into a classroom and see that and be scared when he can't even verbally express that. I don't know what the answer is. My consideration is right now, I feel like we're going into a season of cold and flu. We're going into holidays. Not to be rude, I don't know if you're going away for the holidays. Are you going to be with a big family group? I don't know what you guys are doing. My only thought is to maybe wait until January on that part, but I don't know, because I don't know the answer. I know for my sons, though, the answer is that I want to keep my teachers because they have been doing a wonderful job. My son, who is 3rd grade, who was nonverbal for a long time, is speaking now. He made a connection with this Mrs. Peters, who's been great. He started subtracting. That's amazing. His face lights up when he sees people, his teachers. When my kids go back, they're not going to have occupational therapy. It's all going to be on a screen anyways. They're not going to, they're not going to have the things that typical children would have anyways. PE is all going to be on a screen for them. I don't know what the answer is, but when my teachers don't feel comfortable, I'm not comfortable. Let me look at this. I understand that teachers are not supposed to make contact with children. My question is, my son, who is 5 years old, literally just got potty trained. And I know other children in my children's classes are not potty trained. How does a teacher deal with that? How does an assistant deal with that? There is not going to be contact? I don't understand this, and I just feel that we need to figure it out. I don't think we need to, and I know people are worried about getting kids back in school. I feel like we have something right now that is working. We are going to be off for the holidays. We are going to be off for, the voter day. We're going to be gone. We have so many days off right now. I just don't see the purpose of going back so soon. I wanted to go back. I would love to have my kids away for a little while. It'd be great. I'd love to have a break. But I just don't see that's feasible right now. I'd like to say on the website, by the way, it says that you're not doing in-person board meetings. So maybe you guys can fix that. That's why I was late. It says you're only doing virtual meetings. So I was a little wondering about that. Let's see, sorry guys. The social experience.
Just real quick, I do
Yeah.
ask you to try and wrap it up a little bit so we can continue on.
Uh-huh.
I'm not trying to cut you off, I just would like you to just.
Okay, my point is, I want you to, number one, I think we should actually look at the MILE program a little bit more. That is something that I do really think we need to focus a little bit more on, or get a little bit of attention on, because I don't want my son in a wet diaper all day for 2.5 hours. And I want my teachers, and I think that's important. So, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Next is Kelly DeCino.
All right, good evening. My name is Dr. Kelly DeCino, and I want to thank you for your overview of the hybrid plan. Let me start by saying that I'm a scientist, and my comments tonight in no way downplay the severity of the global COVID-19 pandemic. I acknowledge that this disease is scary and that we're only beginning to understand it. But at the same time, we do need to think about how we most effectively navigate these times. Whether we like it or not, this problem is here to stay for some time, and we do need to find a new normal. A new normal that allows us to continue to prosper as a society, one where that we prioritize the education of our children, and one where we ensure equity for all our community members. And unfortunately, that's not what I'm seeing with this plan. We can't continue to make so many compromises. And that's what I see with this hybrid proposal. We've had so many compromises that it actually makes no one happy. I know that every family is different, and I recognize the need for remote options for some. But for those of us that are fortunate to be healthy and have little to no risk due to pre-existing conditions with our families, the biggest complaint about e-learning is the lack of social interaction and human-to-human contact. The ability for a teacher to really see their students and build a relationship and know via body language when kids are just not getting it. And to teach and learn in ways that are beyond a screen of little black squares, right? We have to give students the chance to be with their peers and to build their social interactions. The importance of this cannot be downplayed because as humans, we are very social creatures, and the last 6 months have been anything but healthy to our mental health. This hybrid proposal, unfortunately, does not do enough to address these gaps, and the reason is that we're not really approaching it in an innovative or creative way. We can't take an existing construct and just try to bend it and mold it to meet all these crazy new requirements. It results in an awful, misshapen solution with compromises that no one likes. And this premise that a teacher in this hybrid option needs to teach to both on-site and remote students simultaneously is crazy. It's essentially asking an already overworked, stressed out teacher to wear 2 hats. It sounds like how exactly a teacher is going to choose to navigate this may be at their individual discretion, but I'm not sure that's clear to everyone and not even clear to the teachers. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be very challenging. And while I appreciate your day in the life example, I think that without a clear strategy at the classroom level for every individual teacher communicated to the parents, I think many, if not all of us, are going to be very hesitant to opt into this hybrid plan. We're just getting very little in return. No one wants their kids sitting at school, staring at their Chromebooks with headphones and masks on, when they can have the same learning experience, if not better, at home without masks and no elevated safety risk. But what we desire is at least a partial return to in-person teacher-led instruction, where the teacher is able to focus on those in the classroom. And if we have to take a stepwise approach in doing this, then I think we need to have a more viable hybrid plan, one that we really approach remote and on-site learning as uniquely separate work streams, right? We look at the industries that are thriving in this post-COVID era, and it's the ones that rethought their business models entirely. I have heard that this proposal is vetted by a focus group, and I'm very happy to hear that, but I'm not confident that we've really truly leveraged all the collective and diverse wisdom of our community. And I truly understand that this shuffling of teacher and student assignments is not ideal, but that's arguably why we should have stayed the course on the hybrid model way back at the start of the year and actually paired those teachers and students together. We wouldn't be in this situation. But I do think we need to put that scenario back on the table, so I'm very happy to hear that is part of the survey that will be coming out. And I also want to come back to this idea of a stepwise approach, right, being recommended by the Lake County Health Department. I understand that the hybrid proposal is not meant to necessarily be an optimal solution. We can all agree on that. But it's rather just a stepping stone to maybe get us to a full time. But the reality is that may be a while before we're green in all those metrics. And so we need to take the step in the hybrid approach where at least dialing in some positive aspects, specifically like reducing screen time. Because right now, I think we're doing our teachers and children a disservice. I'd also like some clarity around this health metric grid. It does seem very rigid, But it seems that there's flexibility in these recommendations because as others have mentioned, there's a lot of other schools in Lake County, both public and private, that are fully on site. And I'll just conclude with one more thing, and I know others have mentioned it, but it's something that deeply concerns me, and that's the detrimental effects that this hybrid solution is going to have on our ability to run the safe centers. Families with working adults in positions that are not afforded work flexibility are now losing a really critical option. And I'm not adequately informed on all the demographics of who uses these safe centers, but my suspicion is that we're negatively impacting the most risk families in our community. And this is not acceptable, not in this environment where we need to be helping those in need the most. And so we need to do better than this. And I hope we can go back to the drawing board and come up with a better revised solution, even if that means that it can't be implemented to the third trimester. And I know it's not an easy task, and I do truly, sincerely appreciate everyone's efforts. I mean this with no disrespect, but I am confident that we can do better. Thank you.